All right, welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. Dr. Lopkin, I'm going to tee it off with you. You tell me what's on your mind, and I can't imagine what it is.
Well, there's been some very strange things going on in Tijuana with the Caravan of refugees.
And what is that?
Apparently, a large group of them broke off and went to the U.S. consulate and made the demand that either the U.S. speeds up the process and lets them in, or we give them $50,000 each to go away.
Yeah, I saw that. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, these people were
these are
so,
not refugees. These are not.
They were so desperate to come to the U.S., but for a payoff, they'll go home.
The whole thing is ridiculous. What's not ridiculous, I want your read on it. Cohen gets 3 years. Now there's a lot of talk about impeachment. What do you think?
There's a lot of talk about impeachment, but I think the fact that he got 3 years tells me they're not going to be able to do it.
Why?
3 years it was almost the max of what his crimes could get.
And what was his crimes, to articulate it for our listeners? What was it?
He lied. Well,
paying off.
There were several of them. There's a violation of campaign finance. There's lying to Congress, and then there's a couple.
Now campaign finance, does that involve Trump?
We don't know.
That's a big thing, isn't it?
It's a big thing. Honestly, I don't think it does, because he got the 3 years before the sentencing, before they went into court. Mueller made the statement that he was not going to recommend leniency because Cohen didn't cooperate enough.
All right. So
that tells me that Mueller didn't get what he wants.
This Mueller thing, by the way, is it's scary to me as an American. It's like a shakedown cruise. It's crazy.
It really is. And the thing is, the whole thing with the campaign finance is very iffy. If he hadn't pleaded guilty, he probably could have beaten this, because what they're claiming is that he paid off Stormy Daniels and another stripper. I don't remember who it was.
Playboy Bunny or something, whatever.
Something like that, yes. So that they wouldn't come forward and it wouldn't affect the election.
Uh-huh.
However, you have the Access Hollywood tape. Came out. You had numerous women came out against Trump saying he groped them, he did something. These two allegedly were involved in consensual relationships with him.
Yeah, but a payoff to payoff, isn't it?
No. But the idea is it has to be for it to be illegal, it has to be a payoff to affect the outcome of the election. If none of that other information affected the election, why would Trump believe that these would?
I don't know the answer, but with a partisan Congress that's hell-bent on impeachment, I think it's going to be a tough 2 years for Trump. I really think that...
it definitely is going to be a tough 2 years. I mean, we saw that with the temper tantrum that he and Schumer both threw in the Oval Office.
Okay, but politically, don't count your chickens before they're hatched, because the same thing happened with Clinton, okay, Bill Clinton, and you know something? After his impeachment, do you know what his approval ratings were?
They went
70%.
Up. Yeah. Even if they impeach him.
Well, he can't be convicted because the Senate's not.
Right. The Senate's never going to convict him. He's not going to leave office. And there is no law that an impeached president who only served one term can't run for a second term. So they could impeach him. Well, that's a
little bit of a stretch.
Now, they could impeach him, and he could still win a second term.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if legally, if Trump ordered the key is this: if Trump ordered the payout, there's a little bit of problem. But there's a history of payouts in terms of other senators and other
there's
things.
A long history of payouts. In fact, the Senate just passed a resolution stating that payouts for sexual harassment have to come from personal funds. They can't come from the Senate's funds anymore.
Wait a second. Haven't you nailed something, though? If Trump paid out of his own pocket, I don't think that's campaign finance.
It's not. For it to be a campaign violation, it's got to come out of the campaign account.
Okay, well, there you go. So someone's got to know the answer to that. Either it was or it wasn't.
Right.
So if it wasn't, then it's good.
And I tend to doubt it was, because at least one of the payouts that they're talking about came from the National Enquirer, not from Trump. So if that was never declared as a campaign contribution, it's a personal matter, not a campaign violation.
Yeah, so where do you think this all goes, Dr. Lopkin?
I think it's going down to the wire. I don't think the Democrats are going to let go of this. They're going to be like a dog with a bone.
I agree. And what political ramifications do you think it has, Dr. Lopkin?
Honestly, I don't think it's going to work out for the Democrats as well as they think it is. Even if they do impeach him, I think it's going to drag out so long that public opinion is going to turn against them for putting the country through this. And what they fail to realize is that even if they do impeach him, even if they, by some matter of magic, were able to get him out of office, they don't get control. Mike Pence steps in.
Yes, I find it very troubling. The whole Mueller investigation was a witch hunt from the start. The whole thing was orchestrated because not only the Democrats, but the swamp lost, and they didn't like it. Is that not true or what?
That's exactly true. This was a temper tantrum. The entire last 2 years has been symbolized by temper tantrums.
I would agree. I think it is troubling as an American that how something that was based on nothing can go 2 years, no end in sight, and can go on forever.
And, people talk about budget deficits and all of this. How much taxpayer money is being wasted on this investigation?
Well, also, when is Mueller going to make his findings?
I don't think he's going to say anything until he actually has something that he can prove. And remember, Ken Starr had evidence
for 4 years, 8 years.
Well, but more importantly, though, Ken Starr had evidence against Hillary Clinton in Whitewater. It was never presented because, according to Ken Starr, they could not prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. So there is still that, that caveat. If Mueller may have all sorts of things, but if he can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, it's not going to go forward.
Well, we'll see what happens. I think I think also Jeff Sessions should be blamed for this as well.
Jeff Sessions should be blamed.
Rosenstein, obviously.
Comey obviously has, some responsibility for all of this.
It's very interesting because I talked to some liberal friends of mine, and they've been listening to MSNBC. See, they're convinced that all these crimes happened. They're convinced.
Of course they are, because the media is in the Democrats' back pocket. From the day after the election, the media went after Trump. They were determined to destroy his presidency because that was not their candidate.
There is no question about it. Well, Dr. Lopkin, another exciting week, a troubling week, but an exciting week, and we'll be doing it again with Carnivore Bites. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. See you then.
Take care.
You've been listening to Carnivore Radio's podcast. You can catch us here every week. Carnivore Radio is part of the Xvadio podcast network. You can listen to the podcast at blogtalkradio.com/Xvadio. If you want to be part of the conversation, you can listen to us live every Friday at 4 o'clock on WESU 88.1 Middletown, Connecticut. You can also catch us online at WESUFM.org. We look forward to hearing from you, and see you next week.